in one particular location of the brain. Something that you can never do with electrons alone. Any questions at this point? Okay. Now, what can you actually start doing with this kind of thing? Well, here's one paper that came out recently in Joe Chan's lab, merely coding of the concept of nest in the massive brain. So people are beginning to unwind the actual neural structures that underlie specific ideas and specific concepts. And this is what I riff on in Worldwide Mind. Now, again, I do not propose actually genetically modifying the brain, inserting light sources into it, just to allow people to communicate. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that it's becoming conceptually possible that future more advanced technologies might allow for such a thing to be realized. So here's how I see it working. So you have some kind of technology, like an optogenetic array in one brain, that knows that when that brain is thinking of apple, these neurons fire. Now, every brain is different in terms of how your brain encodes apple different from the way my brain encodes apple. Well, let's say my implanted computer system knows which neurons fire in my head when I see an apple, and knows which neurons in your head fire when you see an apple. So that all it has to do is send across the World Wide Web a code, apple, to another person with a similar implant. And that person's implant knows which electrodes, or rather which neurons to fire to make them think of an apple. So this is what I start to call synthetic perception. I've invented a whole set of words that kind of make up what I see this doing. Synthetic perception, making one brain see some simulacrum of what another brain is experiencing, and telepathy, the awareness of another person's feelings, emotions, perceptions, and entities. So the big question becomes, well, first of all, I got to issue a few disclaimers here, okay, in the spirit of responsibility. So there really isn't any way to distinguish individual memories from other memories. In fact, the whole concept of memory is extremely fluid. The brain is not as simple as a big indexing system where specific sets of neurons are devoted only to specific memories. It's a lot more complicated than that. And there's some lengthy passages in the book where I explain those issues. I also talk about the fact that just having me think of an apple to make you think of an apple doesn't really help us very much. We really need a shared communicative context. So I imagine this working with teams, where the teams all are looking at certain things in common. And this allows them to share information about their shared environment more rapidly than they could with speech alone. And of course, you need cheap, easy, and safe brain surgery, which is not so easy. But the reason I bring up all this is not to persuade people that it should be done, or even that it can be done, but rather that it's conceptually possible. But this is the background in which I think about this. So we have this big debate going on today about what the internet is doing to us. So there's a whole slew of books out about whether the brain, or rather whether the internet is divorcing us from each other, whether we are also compelled by our iPhones and our Blackberries, so that we spend more time looking at these things than we do at each other. So there's just all these books about this. So there's Sherry Turkle's book, Alone Together, where she gives all these extremely valuable interviews for teenagers who become so uncomfortable actually talking to each other that they prefer to text each other rather than talk face to face. And on the other hand, we have these technophile books, like Ray Kurzweil's books, where he basically says technology is going to do its own thing and leave us behind, and we don't need to really worry about that. So we have this whole cultural discourse going on about what the internet is doing to us. And that is how I start in Worldwide Mind. I start with the fact that when BlackBerry died, leaving me feeling utterly bereft. I couldn't check my email, I had no access to the web. Instead, I had to pay attention to the world around me. And my God, what a shock that was. But it got me thinking. The reason we think of technology disassociating us is because the act of using it forces us to do that. When I want to text someone, if I turn this on, look at it, and I start ignoring all of it. So technology is kind of here, the body and the world of lived experience is over here, and they are still very separate. I was thinking these worlds have started to come together. I've got a computer in my head that feeds me auditory information. What if there's a way to integrate that world of the internet, of texting and email, with the world of the physical lived body? In other words, to make experiencing the internet feel like one's own physical bodily experience. That is the scenario that I outlined in Worldwide Mind. But I do this against that background of social concern. Now the subtitle, The Coming Integration of Humanity Machines of the Internet, makes it sound like a super nerd book. And in a lot of ways it is. All sorts of genetic engineering, optogenetics, neurotechnology, nanotechnology, it's all there in the book. The book is also a love story. And in fact, I had this big argument with my publisher about trying to work that into the subtitle. I wanted the subtitle to be The Coming Integration of Humanity and the Internet, a love story. Yeah, but publishers didn't want to do that because they were afraid that people in bookstores would misshelve the book. And I partly had to concede that. As Kathy will tell you, publishers have their own ideas about how books should be marketed. So this battle didn't come out the way I had hoped. But it is a love story in two respects. First, it's the story of how I learned new methods of communication. Because, for one thing, I'm as addicted to the internet as anyone. And second, I'm deaf. Growing up, I had to struggle to communicate in groups. I had to struggle to understand people one-on-one. So, there's a moment when I realized that I was 40 years old and I've never been in love. I had all these relationships, but I'd never really been in love with anyone. And I felt really unhappy about that, as most people do if they hit 40, and they've never been at that point. So I went to these communication workshops in Northern California, which were very radical, and I'll let you find out for yourself how radical they were. I'll just say that I contrasted a high-technology, low-touch world with a completely different environment that was high-touch and no technology at all. And I did that in learning how to look at someone, how to listen to someone, how to really hear a person, instead of running my own interior monologue. And so I tell these two parallel stories in the book. There's the story of high technology, low touch, the World Wide Web, and the story of my workshop experiences, high touch, low tech, and these two stories counteract and counterbalance each other. So basically the book has a moral imperative. It says, we're never going to stop using technology. We will always be hooked on it. And we really have been ever since we invented writing. Indeed, since we invented the file. But we can counteract that by explicitly teaching people how to listen to each other and how to communicate. This is an ancient human need that we ignored at our parents. So that is a fundamental idea in Worldwide Mind. So people look at this optogenetics, genetic modification, they say, that's completely crazy, that'll never happen. Well, cochlear implants were a crazy idea in 1975. In fact, I've gone back and I've read papers that were written in 1975 by otolaryngologists examining this idea. And they said, it's completely crazy, it'll never happen. So one of the things they said was, you'll never get that much computing power inside the skull. Well, back in 1975, the computers that were used to drive cochlear implants were the size of small refrigerators. So it was not easy to imagine how something that big would ever be in use. But of course, that indeed happened. So by similar analogy, I suggest that new technologies may make the currently unthinkable, the currently implausible, into something that is eventually practical. So what do you get with such a technology? Well, you certainly get faster and richer interaction with computers, which a lot of people would really love to have. You get some form of direct mind-to-mind communication, and I offer a number of scenarios in the book as to what that could actually look like, and ultimately some kind of high